I'm Lucinda Hart, and alongside my co-host, Debbie LeBlanc, I'd like to welcome our guest, speech language pathologist, Daphne Cagle. Daphne, thank you for joining us here on Educated Women Uplifted.
Thank
Daphne,
you.
Daphne, you have such a fascinating story. Can you please share a little bit about your premature birth and how it affected your vision growing up?
Well, I was born 2 months early, and fortunately, I was born in a big hospital in Los Angeles. And so I was really low birth weight. I weighed 2 pounds and 12 ounces. And as you can imagine, this was quite a long time ago. And they had learned that if they gave babies oxygen, it would keep them alive and there'd be a better outcome. And but the technology was not there yet to measure blood gases. So therefore, babies were given 100% oxygen. Now, this caused scar tissue on the retina, which resulted in a condition which is now called retinopathy of prematurity. And it still exists with really, really small babies that they're saving now. There was a big spike in the 70s again because of saving the even smaller and tinier babies. But it caused me not to be able to see really well, particularly in one of my eyes, my left eye, and but some limitations to my vision in my right eye. So, and that I guess has affected me in that I can't drive is one thing. And so, I've had to deal with, I don't know what other people see, but it's been this way, my entire lifetime.
Okay. Wow. Wow. Your family moved quite a bit while you were growing up. What was that like for you as you tried to keep up with school?
Well, kind of terrible, but not for school. It was terrible in a personal way. Like in junior high and high school, I went to 6 schools in 6 years. We moved, can you believe it, in the middle of my senior year in high school, which I really didn't like. But I had a method to overcome this. I am kind of a joiner of groups, and I like to be around people. And so I played in the band the school band from when I was in seventh grade all the way through college. So this served as an instant group of friends that I would associate. I'm the new flute player in the band. And so therefore I was able to make friends. As far as academics, I don't think it really mattered because I was a pretty good student to begin with. And I, made some friends and fit in with whatever new crowd I was able to come in contact with.
Daphne, there was one teacher in particular, Mrs. Toops, who made a real difference in your life. Can you share the story about her and the impact she had on you?
Well, my family lived in Houston and the Gulf Coast because my dad was in the oil business. So when I was little, my parents decided they should send me to a private school. Couple of reasons. One is my birthday was September 2nd, and the cutoff for public school was September 1st. But the other reason they thought a private school would be better in the early grades was because I didn't see that well. And so for kindergarten to third grade, I went to a private school in Houston, Texas. And in second grade, I had this teacher named Mrs. Toops. And my parents treated me a lot differently. When I got home from school, I had to sit at the kitchen table while mom cooked dinner and do my homework. My sisters, who were younger than I am, were able to go outside. And even when they caught up with me in grades, they still got to go outside no matter what grade they were in. And I had to sit there at the kitchen table and do this homework while mom kind of supervised, as it were, because they were really worried about me and they thought I was blind when I was really little. And so they had a parent conference, and I remember the exact instant that this happened. They had a parent conference with Mrs. Tubes, my second grade teacher, and she told my parents that I was smart, that I was going to go to college, that they didn't need to worry so much. They didn't need to obsess over what was going to become of me. And I can understand my parents being young parents. They were in their 20s. Dad had gotten his degree and all that. And, but I understand that they were very concerned about me, and they just didn't know here was something new, that there wasn't a lot of literature or advocates or support or anything. And they really didn't know. And Mrs. Tubes told them that I could be successful. And so they kind of were able to reevaluate what they were doing. The other thing is, in second grade, I decided I wanted to be a teacher because of Mrs. Tubes and her impact on my life, and how just by talking to parents, you can change a child's life, and convince my parents and therefore me to believe in myself.
Wow.
That is so touching.
I know. Yes.
Oh, thanks for sharing that piece.
Yes. Thank you. So, Daphne, thinking back to your school days, what were some of the moments where having limited vision felt like a big hurdle?
Well, I had to sit on the front row. I couldn't see the board. This is the days before technology. So I couldn't. And sometimes if there were math problems being worked, I'd have to kind of walk up, but I didn't want to block everybody's vision. So I'd kind of stand by the side and try to kind of look at what the material that was written on the board. And I do feel there was several times where I asked for assistance, and I think we'll get into that later, where no one helped me. There was no help at all, and people just didn't understand, and they didn't believe it. And one example was I cannot see through a microscope. You know how you have to take your glasses off to look through a microscope? Well, I can't see that way. So my only C in college was in zoology lab, because I couldn't see what was under that microscope. So I got up all my nerve, which was really hard for me. And I had a teaching assistant for that class, that lab section. And I got up all my nerve and I went into that teacher and said, this is the thing. I really can't see. I have good grades on all the worksheet type activities and all the things that were bigger, but I can't see anything. She didn't believe me. And
Wow.
I had gotten up all this nerve, and there was nothing I could do. And, I didn't think, like nowadays you'd go to the dean, or probably there's an ADA compliance officer that you could file a complaint with. Well, I didn't think of any of that. And I don't know who I would have even gone to be able to challenge that. So, I got an A on the written workshop. And if it was a microscope thing, wasn't able to answer. And so it averaged out to be a C. So I took the C in the 1 hour class because there was nothing else I could do about it.
Wow. Yeah. Ah. So I think we can all relate to that about asking for help, but why do you sometimes hesitate to ask for help? I mean, probably some of those experiences, I would think, but
historically, it hasn't been too successful. Another time I was in grad school and the teacher had, back in the day, typed notes on the overhead. They were typed in from a typewriter, and I couldn't read any of that. And so I asked the teacher, this was grad school, so she had her planned lectures, right? So I said, can me and another girl that couldn't see that well, we both went to the teacher and said, can we borrow she had all these notes typed in plastic sleeves. So can we just borrow your notebook? We'll bring it right back. We won't share it with anybody. Can we borrow it and just make a Xerox copy of those notes so that we can have them when you actually give the lecture? She goes, oh no, just get them from somebody after the lecture. Well, if the lecture notes are integral to the material the teacher is presenting, you need the lecture notes at the same time that anybody else has those notes. So I would scoot my chair next to another student and try to copy off their paper, but then I was way behind on the lecture. So really, it hasn't been very successful back when I was in school for asking for help. And so, you only ask a few times. It takes you a lot of nerve to ask. And I was kind of embarrassed about asking. And so when you ask and no one cares whether you've asked, what's the point in that? So I just kind of, the couple times that I did ask for help, I just kind of gave up on it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's heartbreaking. Yeah.
Daphne, as I'm listening to your story, I'm so incredibly moved by your persistence and all of the nerve and bravery it took to do that. Can you pretend like you're going to sit today? It's 2026. You're going to sit down with your younger self, Daphne. What would you say, if anything, different to her about how she can have her voice heard and speak up for what she needs?
Well, I think as a younger student, it would be hard. I think it's changed now. I would like to say to tell my younger self to be more honest about this and that people aren't judging you because you can't see that well. I've worked a lifetime to get over that situation of asking for rides to things. And I think I'm pretty forthcoming. Like if someone takes me to a meeting, I'll pay for their lunch or pay for gas or something. I mean, I think I've tried to be really forthcoming on that, but I do think it's hard if you don't get a really good response. But I think now things have changed. And I do feel like I think not being embarrassed is one place to go. I've worked really hard on trying to overcome the fear that people would think I wasn't as competent as other people because I can't do some things like driving, and that sort of thing. So I think to go ahead and ask is a good thing. I was forthcoming on asking to sit in the front row and such like that. I did tell teachers, but I think I would need to tell another person that it's okay, no matter what you're overcoming. It's okay to be able to not be the same as everybody else.
And in this day and age, with such impressions that are made on young people with social media and all aspects of that, in so many ways, so many children already feel I'm different, I'm not liked, I'm this, I'm that. Things are happening in my family that put me in a position to advocate for themselves, so much like you did. And when you think about years ago, you having to do that, I mean, the strength. I just marvel at that. I really do. So,
Well, I think the bullying was really the worst part. I was bullied a lot. And I think we have to have a no, we have to have teachers know that it's okay if you're being bullied to students to come to you. And think I think part of not admitting it for me was the horrible notes people left me, the mean comments people made, and I was a good student. So, I can imagine what they say to people that weren't. And I think that it makes you not want to fess up if you're being bullied. And I think now I've seen in the schools a no tolerance to bullying. Um, and I've worked really hard and been successful at getting the special education students I work with to not be bullied. And I think that's come a long way as well.
well, and that is a perfect segue into something I wanted to ask you. So, when was the aha moment to become a speech and language pathologist?
Well, there was really no aha moment exactly. I was I worked in the summer as kind of partly volunteer, but partly paid by my friend's mom at a school in Houston, a very well-known school for students with learning disabilities. And I worked there every summer. And I worked as what we would call a classroom assistant. And I really enjoyed working with that population. So when I was traveling through Houston, I called up my mom's friend and just to talk. And she goes, "Oh, we've decided what you should major in." And I was going to major in history because I love history. And so she decided I should major in speech pathology. And that's when I decided to investigate that. The other thing that happened in my career that I think is really relevant to this is I have a minor in learning disabilities and several other teaching credentials. And so I was asked at the school that I loved to teach the language impaired special day class, mostly high functioning students with autism. And I did that for 15 years. And I got to teach all of the subjects, including history. Sometimes I team taught with general ed teachers, and sometimes I had my students in language arts and history, trying to make the subject matter come alive. But what was the important thing about this is that it was junior high, it was middle school that I'd hated at a school that I loved. And so I was able to, I got up every morning and said, okay, what can I do to make this the best years of these kids' lives? And I had to deal with, I went to the student leadership and there was a bullying happening with one of my students. I went to the student leadership, gave a talk. They got it stopped that day. They said, "Miss Cagle, we can do that for you." Absolutely. And they went to the bullies and said, "Knock this off. We don't act like this at this school." And so things have come a long way. And I wanted to make those young people that I worked with have a very good time in middle school because my experience was so awful. And every year on my birthday, one of my ex-students posts on Facebook how I was the best teacher he ever had
Aw.
because he loved middle school so much. And so,
Well, and I don't know many middle school kids who say, "I love middle school." Oh, Daphne, you really are an inspiration. Let me ask you another question about, the American Disabilities Act really changed the legal landscape for many individuals who are differently abled. And how did that open up opportunities for you to be able to pursue your work, your life, that type of thing?
well, yesterday I was at an airport. I was at an airport that I'm not very familiar with at all. And I have a fear of getting lost because I can't always read the signs. I mean, I use my phone to magnify things and I can take a picture of it and blow it up and all these other accommodations that I've developed. But I'm really uncomfortable at airports that I don't know where they are. So my son dropped me off. He went to park and I went in the wrong door because I didn't see a sign of where Southwest Airlines was going to be. So I saw some other airlines, but I didn't see where I needed to go because I brought a bag that I needed to check. So I asked the guy at the counter, you know, or it was a guy that was just walking around where Southwest was. He goes, "Do you have trouble seeing?" Or somehow we got on that conversation. And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Would you like me to walk you there?" This would never happen before that. So he walked me to the Southwest gate of check-in place, explained to the gal what I needed. She checked in my luggage. So I waited around, called my son. He came in and I asked for a gate pass so that he could walk me to the gate, which they gave him. So he walked me to my gate and that was that. And, when I'm not traveling with somebody else, and since I don't see well enough to drive, I have to be really careful on all those things. But nowadays there are supports for this. This guy didn't hesitate to help me. So it is better in that way. And technology has changed the landscape a lot because there are digital tools that help me every day.
Good. Okay. Great.
No.
Glad
Oh.
to hear all that's in place. And kindness
Yes.
still lives.
Yes. Yeah. That gave me goosebumps. I was like, oh. So, well, Daphne, what does, going to shift a little bit here. What does self-care look like for you? Are there specific boundaries or habits that you've built to manage some of your needs? You talked a little bit about them, but if maybe you can elaborate on some of that.
Well, I have a good memory, and I use my memory. It helped me when I was in high school band to kind of be able to remember the pieces, so I didn't have to rely on sight so much. The technology is there, I have a magnifying glass, in my cell phone, in my hands at all times. Um, I I am able to, just blow things up in an instant and be able to see them. And I think that that has really helped me. The use of the computer, even though I get like eye strain if I look at it too long, I think technology, there is a lot of technology, voice, the things that'll say things to you, or ways to input things into, AI or something, and get an answer to something and be able to see things larger and stuff. There's a lot of technologies that help. I still am slower, I think, than other people. When I write a report, I have to look at it more carefully than other people, because if I don't, it might have like a mistake, so I'll either have it read to me, or I'll, look at it, blow it up maybe. So I do think there are some accommodations, mostly accommodations that I have put in place. I do want to tell a quick story. When I was in the division for the blind, paid my tuition in college, not in grad school. I got a teaching assistantship, but in undergrad school. And so they paid my way, my tuition and my books. And they had this meeting once a semester or something. You were supposed to go to tell about how you'd survived. And I was marching in the band, so I could never go to their meetings until my last semester. When I went to the meeting, I didn't have an excuse to get out of it. So I went to the meeting, and they were walking around, and I was doing my general ed student teaching. And they come to me and they said, "What year are you?" and blah, blah, blah. And I said, "Well, I'm a graduating senior." And they said, because they couldn't believe it, "Well, how have you gotten along without," I guess they were some sort of disability office that I didn't even know about. "And how have you gotten along all these years without this?" And I said, "I studied and went to class. I don't know. I just didn't know there were any resources there." And so now there are much more resources. And I think my family, one of the things they did do is they taught me just to go do it. And so that's what I've done through my life to get by with what I needed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. How difficult is it to share your story with others?
It's interesting that you asked this because I had to really think hard about doing this podcast. I said to my husband, "Ooh, I don't want this to make me," I was worried about how it would look in the eyes of everybody to admit this. My friends know it, and they'll help me. Like if we come to a busy street, they'll grab my arm and stuff. I mean, people do help me a lot, but putting it out there on a public media was a little bit beyond my comfort zone. And I did talk to some people, and they did convince me that it was important to share my story. So I decided that it was okay at this point to do that. But yeah, it is a little bit difficult. I've worked very hard on being able to admit things that maybe as a child I didn't want to admit.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing your story. It is really, it's inspirational, but it's also very informational too. I think thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your story. So, I know you mentioned about the gentleman that helped at the airport as well, but if you maybe also, what other ways you've noticed the shift in how people treat you or talk about disabilities compared to when you were younger?
Well, I have a new teacher that I worked with, and it teaches visually impaired students in our district. And she shared with me a lot of resources that I didn't know. So I think there just are more resources available now. There are more people to share those. And I do think that people look upon it as a different situation that, when I was hired, I asked about transportation. I thought San Francisco has lovely transportation. I'd gone to a convention. I kind of wanted to move there, but they weren't hiring at the convention, and I needed a job right away. And so I went, I moved here, and I had to deal with a lot of the fear of how do I get places? And I've been left places. The transportation has gotten messed up over the years. So I think being flexible, but now there are so many more resources that people can activate, more people that are aware, more people in the schools that have as a job to check on students. And I actually have observed her because she was one of my new teachers that I was observing, and seen her work with kids, seen her talk to teachers and tell them, well, this would need be a help on this assignment, or maybe ask the student if they understand this assignment or they know what to do. Because I faked it a lot and pretended I saw what the assignment was and did the wrong thing a couple times because I just didn't know. And I always had a best friend, and I should have asked them, but I didn't know I didn't know. So I think that now there is so much more awareness in the schools of young people that have needs. I started teaching the year that Public Law 94-142, the precursor to IDEA, started. And so all of those things in place have helped our students be able to navigate the educational environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. We all remember COVID. When we went virtual with COVID, did that make things more accessible for you, or did it create more, a new set of headaches for you?
Well, like everybody, I was doing virtual speech therapy, and I had to learn, like, okay, I got these materials here, but I can't use any of them. So what do I do? So I had to learn to use the digital tools, but that's the same for everybody. And I feel I have pretty good technology skills for someone that's my age. So therefore, actually, COVID was not a big deal. I mean, yes, I did go to some classes that were offered by the professional organizations that I belong in, to how to work with certain goals virtually. But I didn't really have, besides the staying home aspect, I didn't really have any problems with COVID that anybody else didn't have, because COVID was just, the technology seemed okay to me.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning to work with, these parents and students? What's that's driving that passion for you?
Well, my part-time retirement job is working with preschool speech and language delayed students, mostly on the autism spectrum. I go into one class, and I also have some walk-on students and some students in the regular preschool and TK at my school. So why I continue working is because I feel like I have a gift that I can impart to those students, that I know how to answer any question that comes up, and I know how I can train the parents to help their students and work with the students. And I've seen students that didn't talk at all say stuff, and nobody ever heard them say anything ever. So the fact that I can use my creative skills to make the world accessible, and for students to get what they want and need is really a gift that I can give to the next generation and the families that I serve. And that's why I continue to do it. I know how to do it and I want to do it. And why not do it while you're retired if you're still physically able to do this job? Why not continue to do it? And so I continue to work part-time.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Daphne, speaking of gifts, you were recognized as the 2008 Sacramento City Unified School District, lots of words, Teacher of the Year. What did it feel like to win that award?
Well, it was amazing and like startling. The two things that I got from winning that award that were really unexpected. One was when the people that came to observe from the Teacher of the Year committee, they found that my class was no different than anybody else's class. Yes, we might do more skits to act out history or something like that, and we might have more visual cues so that the students could comprehend the material. But we were doing the same textbook as everybody else. We were studying the same content. We were probably on the same unit that everybody else. So I could spread that message that my students were no different than any other students. They just needed some additional support to learn the content material. And the second thing I learned, which was even more startling, is so sometime I was asked to speak, to an event in the district or with multiple districts, And the thing that was so startling about it was, so I was nervous, of course, giving these speeches, but I got to meet a lot of really decision makers and policy makers that I wouldn't expect to meet in my normal every day to day. And I would have wonderful conversations with like the California superintendent of public instruction about what special ed kids need and how to make kids successful. I have a teacher that I worked with that if you had me in middle school and if you had him in high school, we had worked together and every one of our students passed the high school exit exam that was required at that time. And so I was able to spread the word about what it takes to make special education students successful. And that was a real bonus because I didn't in my normal daily life come in contact with these policymakers and important dignitaries. And I could have a conversation with them when I showed up at a meeting with them.
So speaking of those conversations that you've had with those individuals who make policy, and what would one thing be that you would say to them today? Or if you had to say policymakers, educators, students who are facing very similar challenges, what's one thing
that
you would say?
Special ed kids can be successful if given the right supports. Teachers that have a lot of training, class limits, assistance in the classroom, different things, opportunities to team teach. I wrote to a math teacher during the summer and I thought he'd say no and said, listen, I have a lot of kids that really should be at your level of math. Can I come and team teach? And I was able to develop graphic organizers, and his was second period, and I'd go Xerox the thing for all the rest of his classes, and he'd use it the rest of the day with other students. So with the right support, special education students can be successful.
Daphne, you have provided so many inspirational messages during this wonderful, enlightening conversation. So if I'm that person out there who's going to be listening to this podcast, what is one thing you hope that I really take away from this?
That you shouldn't be limited, that you can do anything that you would like to do. There are resources out there and accommodations out there, and you can provide some yourself or other people can help you, but that you can do anything that you want.
Well, Daphne, I can't
So
thank
inspiring.
you. You are. And we can't thank you enough for sharing
Yes.
your incredible story. I've known you for such a long time and I've always admired you. I'm going to say right now that your story of bravery, strength, vulnerability, kindness, belief, so many things that you could have simply said, I'm disabled and let that be the albatross on your back. And you never have. And you stood up for yourself. You've taught others how to stand up for themselves, all with kindness and grace. And I know that anyone who listens to this podcast is going to be incredibly moved. And we can't thank you enough for joining us today. Thank you, Brenda.
Yes. Thank you, Daphne.
Thank you.